At this point in the unit, you've learned about the difference between reinforcement and punishment. So you know that a reinforcer is anything that increases the likelihood that a behavior is going to reoccur. This doesn't mean that it's good necessarily. For example, a child who's acting out in class and is reprimanded by the teacher. Well, if the function of that child's behavior was to gain access to attention, even if it's negative attention, that might actually increase the likelihood that they act out again in the future. So that negative attention can act as a reinforcing consequence, even though we might not perceive it as being something that's good. Like, a kid doesn't necessarily want to get in trouble. So remember, reinforcer doesn't mean good. It just means, in the case at least of positive reinforcement, it means that something is added to make it more likely that a response is going to reoccur in the future. So now we're talking about contingencies of reinforcement, or the relationship between a response is a behavior, and a reinforcing consequence. Continuous reinforcement is just like it sounds. It's when we reinforce an organism continuously every time they exhibit a correct or desired behavior. So every correct response or every correct behavior is reinforced. So when I'm first teaching my dog a new trick, say it's to sit, I have to reinforce them every single time they sit. Eventually, I'm going to be able to taper off the reinforcement using what's called partial or intermittent reinforcement, which means that I'm only going to reinforce or give a treat sometimes. Why do you think continuous reinforcement isn't good for maintaining behaviors? Let's say I want a behavior to be maintained. If I reinforce it continuously and then I all of a sudden stop, what's the organism going to do? What's the dog going to do if I just one day stop giving them treats altogether? They're going to stop sitting, right? So we switch up to partial or intermittent reinforcement where we reinforce sometimes because we want to maintain the behavior. We want the dog to be like, oh, if I sit now, I might get reinforced or I might get that treat. Ooh, they didn't reinforce me now, but maybe later. So like we want to vary when we give or when we deliver the reinforcement, or for how many behaviors we deliver the reinforcement so that the behavior will continue. So whereas continuous reinforcement is the best for teaching a new response or a new behavior, partial or intermittent reinforcement is essential in order to avoid extinction, meaning the disappearance of the desired behavior. Think about this scenario. Who's going to stop playing the slot machines first? The woman who's been continuously reinforced, meaning her machine is paying out and paying out and paying out, or the man whose machine pays off every once in a while, intermittently? Well, for the woman who's been playing continually, as soon as her machine stops paying off, she's going to get up and walk away and try a new machine. But this guy over here, he's like, wait a minute, it hit a few minutes ago, maybe a few more button presses, it's going to hit again. He's probably more likely to stay and play longer. And so this type of scheduled reinforcement, which is the subject of our next video, is called a variable ratio reinforcement. Slot machines operate off of a variable ratio reinforcement, meaning a person or an organism doesn't know how many responses they need to give before the reinforcement is going to come. So they're going to keep, in this case, pressing the button and pressing the button and pressing the button because they don't know how many button presses it's going to take before the machine is going to pay off.